I'm recording.
My research question that I decided to look into were if my independent reading journal activity was helping improve reading comprehension with my students. The first year that I was teaching, the majority of my students came to me and they were below grade level in reading, and mostly because due to comprehension. So I thought possibly if I gave them some student choice in what they were reading and gave them activities that they could do with text that they chose, that might help. The introduction, when completing the ACT reading plan test at the beginning of the school year, many students were not successful on the reading part of the test due to their comprehension issues in reading. So I started searching for ways for students to engage in reading. Most of my 9th grade students in my traditional classes, they did not enjoy reading. They didn't think it was fun. And that was the main reason that they didn't want to do it, because they did not like the text that they were reading. So I thought by giving them choice and setting page goals for them to read each 9 weeks, that might get them reading more and therefore improve their comprehension. So in all of my English classes in 9th grade, I implemented the independent reading journals. The other 9th grade teachers did not. And working on trying to improve comprehension, vocabulary was also an issue that I noticed, and just overall student engagement. So the purpose of this study is to find if the activities that I'm using in my classroom are improving students' reading comprehension, determining if the reading journals are working or if they're not, if the student choice aspect is aiding in their comprehension and their engagement, just helping them to become overall better readers, and determining if the student choice is helping. So some of the research that I looked into for my literature review was articles talking about the importance of comprehension. It talked about strong early reading skills don't always translate into high school, so a lot of students who were very good at reading in elementary school, they kind of taper off as they go through high school because they're not reading as much. So a lot of times you'll notice in middle and high school we're not teaching those basic reading skills anymore, but they need to continue being retaught because they're losing those. Something else that I thought was interesting, the National Assessment of Educational Progress has proven that more than 70% of students in grade 8 and 65% in grade 12 are not reading on their grade level. So those are very high numbers, and that's something that we obviously want to work on, because reading is something that they're going to have to do in every aspect of their life, even after school. And students from high poverty areas, oftentimes they lack the academic vocabulary. They're not exposed to as many words as other students are, so that's something else that aids in reading comprehension is their vocabulary. The foundation of reading comprehension, the correlation between vocabulary knowledge and reading comprehension is very substantial. So vocabulary, like I said earlier, very heavily aids in comprehension. Reading comprehension is supported by knowledge of words and semantic representations, and vocabulary knowledge is one of the best known predictors of reading comprehension. So based on the amount of words that students know, that kind of gives you an indicator of their reading comprehension level. The importance of student choice in the classroom, this is something that I really worked on this past school year, because I truly feel like if students are engaged and they have a choice in the activities that they're doing, that they're going to learn more that way. So some studies that I looked at, they confirm that providing students with choice and opportunities to choose what they read and the activities that they do with that reading increases their motivation and makes them more likely to participate in class. And time spent in engaged reading has also been shown that it's positively affecting reading achievement, and they're continuing to read more when they like what they read. And these are just some of my references. Okay, so the first research question that I looked into is, what effect do student-selected independent reading journals have on 9th graders' reading comprehension? So the reason that I kind of chose this is at the beginning of the year, 50% of my students entered the 9th grade below grade level on reading. So those are very alarming numbers to me. I noticed that students struggled with vocabulary words, a lot of basic words that I assumed that they knew, they did not know. And just their overall reading comprehension. They were reading passages aloud, we were reading things as a class, but they did not understand what it was that they were reading. So I decided to implement student-selected reading journals at the 9th grade level with all of my classes, both pre-AP and traditional, to determine if by having students choose the text that they read, does it affect their comprehension, vocabulary, and engagement. So the class that I used to look at the data from this past school year was my first period class. There were 28 9th grade students, 17 males and 11 females, and 2 ESL students. And in this class, there were 11 students scoring at grade level or higher than that out of the 28 students at the beginning of the year. So these are the instruments that I used to collect my data from this past school year. I used the Scholastic Lexile test. That's a test that the students take on the computer. They answer different questions based on short reading passages, and it determines what grade level they're reading at. It also kind of gives them ideas of some texts that they might be interested in to kind of help them with the independent reading journal as well. We also did ReadWorks passages and quizzes given on a weekly basis to kind of see if they're comprehending what they're reading, if their vocabulary is growing. For the reading journal activities, students had in the traditional classes, which is what first period was, they had to read 33 pages per week in any text that they chose. And students completed vocabulary, literary terms, and reading response activities based on the text that they chose for themselves for the reading journal. Also, students took ACT planned reading tests given once every semester to kind of track if their scores were growing in that. So, like I said earlier, the Scholastic Reading Inventory Lexile test is used to measure reading comprehension. Students have a growth goal that they are to reach by April when they test for the final time for the school year. And students scoring below an 830 score are considered for a transitional reading class because that puts them very far below the grade level where they should be. The other thing that I use to kind of track their comprehension and their growth toward comprehension were ReadWorks passages. It's an online website. You can go and pull reading passages and they come with questions given once a week to kind of focus on comprehension. As far as the independent reading journals, aside from the assignments that they would do, they had to read at least 33 pages per week, and in turn that added up to 256 per 9-week period. This is just a picture of the reading journal instructions. So the assignments included vocabulary, literary terms, and reading response activities. Each student must complete at least 5 of each assignment per week. Obviously, they're going to be different depending on what text they read. And they turn those in at the end of each week, and we have a conference about it and look at, what areas are they struggling in, what areas did they not complete, and went from there. And this is just a picture of the literary terms that they would choose from, that they would find examples from in their text, and then the reading responses that they would use to kind of respond to what they were reading and kind of engaging more deeper in the text. Okay, so the other instrument that I use for collecting data for this research question is the ACT Plan Practice Reading Test. So these were given once every semester. Sometimes we would do them more just on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. And students would set a growth goal for each semester of what they wanted to score the next time. So we would take these tests, we would go through, look at the questions together as a class, kind of look at which questions most students are missing, kind of work through ways that they can better answer those questions in the time constraint that they have on those tests. So as far as the Scholastic Lexile test is completed once every 9 weeks, it identifies their grade level that they're reading on, and it provides book recommendations for students that they choose categories of books that they're interested in, and it gives them specific books in the library they can check out. The read work passages and quizzes that assess comprehension and vocabulary are given once a week, typically on Fridays, to kind of see what skills they mastered or are still working on for that week. The student choice independent reading journals. Each student they're given 2 class periods a week at 50 minutes each that they read and work on these assignments. And while students are doing that, I'm pulling them up individually and conferencing with them, looking at the work that they've done, helping them in areas that they're struggling with, and we're continuing to set goals for, well, maybe this text is a little too easy and we should look at a higher level text, or, maybe this one's too hard, let's go down. And as I'm conferencing, other students are working independently. The ACT planned reading test, they're given every semester. Students set their goals. So this is just some data of the Scholastic test at the beginning of the year. So reading grade, it shows the reading grade levels of students, and students are expected to show growth each time that they take the test. And at the beginning of the school year, 17 students started below the 9th grade level. So this is when they took it at the end of August. Some reasons why some of them are below grade level are possibly the 2 ELL students, because they were 2 that were below grade level, and students have not mastered the foundational skills for reading. So like I talked about earlier, students who were strong readers in elementary school, they're not being retaught those same skills as they progress through school, and they've kind of forgotten some of those things. So I think that could possibly be a reason why they're not at grade level starting out at the beginning of the year. Something else I looked at in terms of the Lexile data was at-risk students. So I had 50 students at high risk in that class, 20% are on target, and 20% with some risk. And according to research, it says high-risk students have a 1 in 30 chance of reading on grade level. So since there were 50 students at high risk, that kind of shows that it is a lot more difficult for them to get up to grade level. So some reasons why students are at risk: ELL students, they began 9th grade not reading on grade level, just behavior problems in the classroom, they're goofing off, they're not putting forth their full attention, they're not engaged in class. Another thing with this first period class was attendance. A lot of students missed a lot, and as I'll talk about later, that really affected their reading skills, and just needing to be retaught basic reading concepts that some of them probably haven't visited since elementary school, and just problems focusing in class. Let's see. So, like I said earlier, with the reading journals that students could choose their text, they were allowed to read for 2 50-minute periods per week and also work on their assignments. So they can also read outside of the classroom. If some of them are slower at reading, they have extra time to do that, or if they have free time in other classes, they also have SSR once a day that they can read. Students earn participation grades when their weekly goal is met. So there's so many of each assignment that they must complete each week, and once they have done that and we've conferenced about it, they get a participation grade based on that. The average number of students meeting weekly goals over the 9-week period. So in this chart, the light blue is the number of students not meeting their weekly goals, this darker blue is meeting goals, and then this very dark blue is exceeding goals. So it shows that the majority of students in the class are not getting these assignments done, which means they're not reading on their own. So some reason why they're not meeting their goals: limited free time outside of class. I know a lot of students that are slower readers, they're involved in so many activities in sports, clubs, whatever. They don't have a lot of extra time to read if they don't get it done in class. Absent from school, if they're missing those 2 periods each week that they have 50 minutes to read, that's total time that they've lost there. And another thing that I noticed this past year was being not prepared for class. Students would show up and they wouldn't have their books to read, they wouldn't have their journals to put their assignments in, so that was an entire class period that they lost because they did not have their material. So, the data summary from just looking at the Lexile scores and the independent reading journals, 12 out of 28 students are meeting or exceeding weekly independent reading journal goals. So they're reading their number of pages per week and they're completing their assignments. Most students are reading below the 9th grade level. They're becoming more engaged by choosing their own text based on the students who are reading and they're meeting those goals. 70% are at risk currently. Most of the students who are below grade level, they just need to be retaught the basic concepts and basic reading skills and strategies to help them improve in those areas. And students who are meeting weekly goals are showing growth. So the data analysis for the ACT plan, these numbers are really small, but it shows each student and their scores on the reading test that they took in September, the scores that they took in April, and the total growth from each particular student. So 20 out of 28 students showed growth from the fall test to the spring. In the fall, 10 students met the reading benchmark, and in the spring, 18 students met it. And then the benchmark number is 18 for reading in the 9th grade. Why some students didn't, or some reasons why I think some students didn't show as much growth. The ELL students did not receive a reader on this test, whereas in some in-class tests they do. Time constraints of the test, that's something we've been working on, is how to manage their time because they don't have time to read the entire passage and answer the questions. Just overall absences, students not being there when we're going over these important skills, and some students just not focused during the independent reading time that they have. Something else that I looked at was absences. So 6 of the 28 students who did not show growth from the fall to spring reading ACT plan test had over 10 absences. And so this kind of shows, this is how many students had missed 0 to 5 days, 5 to 10, and 10 or more days. So this data shows that the students who missed 10 or more days, they're the ones that are pretty much not showing very much growth. So the summary of what I talked about in the ACT plan data, 20 out of 28 students showed growth, 6 out of 8 students who did not show growth missed 10 or more school days over those 2 semester periods, and some reading standards are being mastered on this assessment, but there are obviously still ones that we need to work on. The data analysis of the ReadWorks checks that I gave each week, this is the data from the final check that we took at the end of the first unit. So the passage quizzes are scored at above grade level, at grade level, or below, and students should start the year at grade level or above, obviously. In August, we had 2 above, 10 at grade level, and 15 below. Some reasons that I think why students might not be at grade level on these checks is students struggle with vocabulary. A lot of them haven't had that exposure to a lot of the academic vocabulary words, having trouble comprehending what they're reading, and just the time that they're given, because these checks are timed as well. And this is the data from the end of the very last unit that we did, the final ReadWorks check. So students should end the year at grade level or above. We obviously want all students to grow. And we had 5 students above grade level, 17 at grade level, and 6 below, that's what that shows in this chart right here. So some reasons why all students are still not at grade level at the end of the year. Possibly they're not reading enough during their independent reading time. They're not getting that time where they're interacting and engaging with text as much. Some students, they're still below grade level on their Lexile, so they are struggling with the 9th grade level text. And some students still just struggling with gaining vocabulary knowledge. So the summary of the research checks 15 of 28 students started the year reading below grade level, and now we have 6 of 28 students ended the year reading below grade level. So that is showing a lot of growth there. Students not focusing during reading time are the ones who were below grade level. So that does show that their amount of time engaging with the text does affect their reading level, and students need more work and more focus on 9th grade level vocabulary. So, based on the information that I've given, what do you think some next steps for my research should be?
I would say that since some of the students aren't using their time wisely, or the ones who just aren't showing up, I think that when you start seeing a decline in that student, maybe then call and have a parent-teacher conference. And if that student sees that not only you care about the amount of time they're putting forth to their reading, but that their parent also cares, maybe that would be more motivation, and they would feel that, this is important and it's something that I should focus on.
That's a good idea.
That is a good idea.
Do you have any suggestions for the students who the parents aren't really involved?
I would find out who they are involved in, like if they play baseball, hunt down the baseball coach, or if they're in a club, or maybe if they had a teacher in the past who they talk about pretty regularly because they liked that teacher. Maybe see if they want to meet with that teacher and see, well, what did that teacher do in the past to get them, to build that relationship.
That's a good idea. Anything else?
I think you got it.
Okay. Alright, so this is just my reflection over this first research question. So doing this research and looking at this data from the past school year allowed me to see effects of programs and activities that I was using in my classroom, because oftentimes we use things but we don't take the time to actually sit down and look, is this working or is it not? It analyzed how students' reading skills have progressed throughout the school year, showed me what skills need to be retaught and that I really need to focus on with this incoming group, and it also helped me show this data to you all as staff members to show effects of specific reading activities. So this is part 2. I had to give a survey, and I gave it to you all based on things that I thought we kind of needed to focus on in our PLC. So the focus question was, what strengths and challenges did the Trust Survey reveal about the 9th grade English teachers at Grace County High School? So the PLC team members, it's 4 team members including myself, 3 9th grade English teachers, 2 in their first year teaching, and the Freshman Academy principal attends our meetings. The instruments for this research question that I used, I gave the Trust Survey, and you guys took the survey, but I'll show you a picture of it in a minute. So it was chosen because trust is not high in our building overall. I thought it was the most relevant to our PLC, and the survey gathers information about trust levels and what areas we need to work on as a group, and 4 members took this survey. So there's just another picture of the survey. So I took the survey to each member in person and collected it at the end of the school day. Members did not put their name on the survey just to kind of be more anonymous, so they felt more comfortable putting how they truly felt on the survey. So it used 2 scales, a 1, 2, 3, and a DNA. So 1 is very important to that person, 2 means somewhat important, and 3 is not very important at all. And then there's also the disagree, neutral, and agree scale as well. There were a total of 16 questions on the trust survey. The first section was kind of asking questions about the level of trust among teachers in the building and the PLC members. And the second section was talking about ways to improve trust between teachers. So survey questions were divided into 4 sections. I just kind of grouped them based on the areas that questions were pertaining to. So I separated those into communication, collaboration, relationships, and observations for my data collection. So this is talking about areas of of strength. So these questions were regarding conversations about learning results and honesty within the PLC. So 100% agreed that they share learning results with each other based on what how their students are performing in the classroom. 100% agreed that sharing results are very important, which is good because we all need to do that and learn from each other. 100% agreed that honesty is very important among coworkers, and 100% also agreed that they are honest with each other. So those were very good things to learn. Another area of strength, these questions were regarding sharing resources and materials, overall collaboration and working together, and contributions to teamwork, so giving each other suggestions, working together on units, things like that. The analysis of these questions were 100% agreed that sharing resources and materials are very important, which was good to know. 100% agreed that collaborating and working together is also important. 100% agreed that everyone makes contributions. If you're working on unit plans or assessments, everyone's giving input and contributing something to that. And 100% agreed that they felt comfortable sharing resources with their colleagues. One area of weakness, these questions were regarding to feeling comfortable with each other, being reliable, celebrating each other's successes and things that they do well, and support from colleagues and good objectives. So 80% agreed that relationships with colleagues are very important. 80% agreed that being comfortable with each other is very important. 80% agreed that support from colleagues is very important. 30% agreed that their successes are celebrated. So that shows that teachers feel that when they do something well, that no one is really, congratulating them or thanking them for doing a good job. And 70% agreed that their successes, or disagreed that their successes are celebrated. So that shows that's something that we need to work on. Another area of weakness, questions regarding classroom culture, staff observations of each other's classrooms, and encounters in the classroom. The analysis of that shows that 50% agreed that they felt welcome in each other's classrooms. 70% agreed it's very important to feel welcome. So they're not feeling welcome right now, but they think it is important that they do in the future. And 20% agreed that it is not important to feel welcome in the classroom. So that's obviously another area of weakness that we need to work on. So the data analysis for this PLC research question, areas of strength based on the data given on the survey, communication among staff members and colleagues is important. Honesty is very crucial in order to work together and achieve the goals that we have. Collaboration as a team is very critical because we all learn well from one another, and all staff gives equal contributions when working on unit plans and things like that. Some areas of weakness based on the data from the surveys, all staff members do not feel that their successes are celebrated. They don't feel welcome going in each other's classrooms, learning about what they're doing, and not all feel supported by their colleagues. So some of the next steps that I came up with for this PLC research questions were steps for the weaknesses, staff input for how they would like their successes to be celebrated, ways to just recognize each other in the building, staff input for welcoming into each other's classrooms. How can you make another teacher feel welcome if they're coming to observe a cool lesson that you're doing? More support for colleagues offered, just being there for each other when someone's having a rough day, coming in and helping them when they need it, and giving staff members more time to discuss and share ideas during the school day is always helpful in that area. Some PLC team needs peer observations at the same content and grade levels to be able to go in and observe what other teachers at the same content and grade levels are doing, so you can be more on the same page and align your content. Follow-up reflections for observations, so kind of giving each other feedback based on things that you saw and things that they could improve on. Constructive feedback and positive ways to celebrate successes for each member in the PLC. The reflection of this survey, the trust survey showed me strengths and weaknesses of the PLC. I'm not sure if everyone was truthful for all questions. It's hard to tell sometimes. And next steps do seem like something that can be attained pretty easily. So overall culture in the building will improve, which is always something that can be improved. Colleagues will feel more supported by each other, which in turn will work together more. And more time to collaborate together allows for teams to be more successful in working towards our goal. So that's all.